Okay, in this video, I'm going to be talking about basic troubleshooting of electrical issues in a residential setting. So you're in a house and maybe a couple rooms are out, or one room's out, or a bathroom's out, or your dryer's out, or something electrical is not working. I'm going to start with some simple methods and then kind of progress into the complicated methods on how to fix it. There is a disclaimer, don't try any of this at home. So a certain part of the house is out. For example, you've got your master bedroom that's not working. First place to go is that big metal box downstairs. It's the circuit breaker box. Get down there, make sure that all of the circuit breakers are not actually tripped. Sometimes they can look like they're on, but they're actually tripped. If you know what circuit that should be like powering the place that's off, just like turn it off, turn it back on. You can also press on every breaker, like just towards the on position a little bit. And if it's like a false trip, because that happens sometimes, when you press it forward, a lot of times it'll snap back into the trip position, and then you can go off and then back on. Now this is kind of an obvious thing. If your circuit breaker is tripped, you've got to go all the way off and then back on before you can turn it back on. So back and then forward. That's opposite direction, back and then forward. All right, now that you've checked the box, I want you to go ahead and check everywhere around the general area that's off for GFCI receptacles. Those are those square outlet receptacles with the little buttons in the middle. You need to make sure that any and every GFCI in the area that's off is not tripped, because those are wired in series. So like the GFCI is here, and then you might have 3 or 4 or 5 outlets coming off of that. These are placed in certain places because of code and everything. But for the purpose of this video, you just need to make sure that all the GFCIs in that area, first of all, are not tripped. But then also look around the panel, because sometimes there's going to be a GFCI, receptacle around the panel that's off. Other times, just like a random place in the house. So just like start in the dead area if you don't see any that are off there, and there's like a little button there. If you do find one, just like press the test button, it'll trip. Press the reset button, it'll come back on live. That might be the problem solved. If you don't find one there, or they're all operating there and your power's still off, check around the panel box. If you don't find any there and they're all still whatever on or whatever, check the whole house. Check every single area for GFCIs. Sometimes like like something across the house is coming off of one, because like they didn't want to do separate circuits for the bathroom or something. So check the whole house for GFCIs that are tripped. And okay, now is where it gets a little bit complicated. Again, don't try any of this at home. Okay, so now you're gonna take off your electrical panel cover. That's the scary thing. You can't be like limp wristed if you're gonna do this. You need to kind of like be serious, hold it up there, just be not limp wristed. So take your panel cover off, and then go ahead with your you need to have some sort of indicator, power indicator, tester. The Klein ones at Home Depot stink. Those things are no good. So you're probably gonna want to get a fluke, because it's not a fluke. All right, so you just check every breaker. So you've already made sure all the breakers are on. Now you're checking every single wire that comes off of every breaker. And so every wire coming off of every breaker should be indicating power. So you're touching that hot pin to every wire coming off of every breaker. And if you find that one of them, the breaker's on, but there's no power going out of that wire, Well, then now you know that your circuit breaker itself is actually burnt up. It's not working. AFCI, GFCI, all-in-one breakers are kind of, they go bad sometimes, but then other times just like standard breakers will arc and spark and will actually lose the power. Now for you electricians out there, and everybody watching this video needs to know that like different breakers are sized for different wires or vice versa. And so you need to like be careful and make sure that you have the right size breaker for the wire. If you have a 12 gauge wire, like a yellow jacketed 12 gauge wire, on a 220 50 amp, range, like circuit, you need to just like, yeah, you definitely don't want that. You definitely don't want that. And maybe that's the reason that it it burned up or something. So you got to make sure that you have the right size circuit breaker for the wire. If it's not sending out power and everything's legit, it's the right size circuit breaker, it's the right size wire, you can just pull that breaker out at that point and just go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, buy the exact same breaker, just reinstall it, and then if it's the breaker, your problem has been solved. Now if it's not the breaker and it's everything's sending out power, now you can start looking for that break basically. So you've got power at your panel, you've got no power in your let's just say master bedroom, and so that means that there's a break between A and B, and so you've got to find out where is that break. Now you can do that in many different ways, but just think about it like this. You've got a wire that's going from A to B, like A to like B, and then like C is out and the rest of the room is out. You've got to find that place where it's not sending out power, whether that be a receptacle outlet, whether that be a lighting like outlet, a junction box. You can get up in the attic, you can kind of trace out that wire. If you've got power coming off of it, turn that breaker off. If you know what breaker it is, go up there, figure out which Romex it is by testing them all. If you've turned it off, you know which one's off, and then just like trace it out, figure out where it goes down, go to the first location, turn your breaker back on. Is there power coming in? Is there power going out? Sometimes when people backstab outlets, like they just fail. That's why I hate backstabbing. So you just got to find where that break is. It might be in a junction box, it might be in a light. There's so many places there's not so many places, there's a couple places it could be. You just got to figure out where it's at. Okay, if it's on a dedicated circuit, you've got power going out of your panel and there's no power in your outlet, your receptacle, and it's dedicated. This would be like your range, your laundry machine, your like unit, stackable unit or whatever. Maybe it's just the dryer. If there's power going out but there's no power at the actual like device behind, like that device or whatever, well, it's probably in that device. So turn your power off, open it up, look at it. Maybe it's all burnt up, maybe it's all arced and stuff. If that's the case, well, you just need to go out, take that receptacle outlet, match it up at your hardware store, come back and then just like swap it out. Okay, and this video is for educational purposes only. There are a couple things you can do as a homeowner, like checking the circuit breakers or checking the GFCIs. As far as taking the cover off your panel, I can't advise you to do that. That does need to be an electrician for the most part, or I guess every time or whatever. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this kind of got you away from calling an electrician potentially, or if you are in the electrical trades, hopefully it was a little bit of a refresher to like how we do things, or some basic methods to get circuits back live. Yeah, there's another video at the end of this one, how to connect wires. If you're just getting into electrical or you're just curious, take a look, check it out. Maybe you'll figure out how to connect wires. And there's another one that it's somewhere about like, kind of some things to think through before getting into the electrical trade. It's very rewarding and all, and even if you don't do it for the rest of your life, maybe you just need some helpful tips to kind of like get you by as a homeowner, because you're like not in a position to call on an electrician and spend hundreds of dollars for them to come out and do something that maybe you could have done by yourself.